Hi everyone, Mr. Vanderpool here. So we've already talked about one half of the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model, which is aggregate demand. And today we're going to be taking a look at the other half of the ADAS model, which is aggregate supply. So what's aggregate supply? It's the level of real gross domestic product that firms will produce at each price level. So we're looking at how much real GDP is going to be produced at a particular price level. Now, aggregate supply can be divided into two types, long-run aggregate supply and short-run aggregate supply. The most important thing to remember about long-run versus short aggregate supply is that in the long run, input prices are flexible. In the short run, input prices are sticky. Now let's go a little bit more into that. So let's talk about the long run. So this is a period of time where input prices are completely flexible and they will adjust to changes in the price level. So let's look at that word input prices there. What are some examples of inputs that businesses have? You have labor costs like wages. That is a major input cost, a major input price. You have costs of capital. You have costs of raw materials. All of these things are input costs. And these input prices in the long run will be completely flexible and will adjust to changes in the price level in an economy. So in the long run, the level of real GDP supplied is going to be independent of the price level. So for example, in the long run, it's important to keep in mind that input prices, wages are a huge input price, are going to be completely flexible and will adjust. So let's say there's a higher price level in an economy. Okay, in the long run, what's going to happen is employers are ultimately going to be paying their employees more, and then aggregate supply is going to adjust. Okay, so in the long run, input prices are going to change and aggregate supply is going to adjust based on those new input prices. This is different than the short run. Okay, so this is the period of time where input prices are sticky and do not adjust to changes in the price level. So in the short run, the level of real GDP supplied is directly related to the price level. So when we think of long run versus short run, we're not going to think of a particular amount of time. We're going to think that in the short run, input prices are sticky and they're not going to adjust to changes in the price level. And in the long run, input prices are flexible and they will adjust to changes in the price level. And then the suppliers are going to adjust to that. All right, let's focus in here on the long-run aggregate supply. So the long-run aggregate supply, or the LRAS, it marks the level of full employment in an economy. It's analogous to being on the production possibilities curve. Remember, full employment is going to be, for the sake of this class, we'll say it's 5% unemployment. Now, because input prices are completely flexible in the long run, changes in the price level are not going to change firms' real profits and therefore do not change firms' level of output. This means that the long-run aggregate supply is vertical at the economy's level of full employment. So for example, let's say the price level went lower. In the long run, what's going to happen is these firms are going to pay workers less, input prices are going to go down, and aggregate supply is going to adjust to that. Okay, but that's only going to happen in the long run, because in the long run, those input prices change and aggregate supply adjusted to that input price changing. So let's look at the long run aggregate supply curve graphically. So we're going to have on our y-axis, we're going to have price level. On our x-axis, we're going to have real GDP. we're going to have a vertical LRAS curve that is above the symbol YF. So Y stands for output, YF stands for full employment output. This is a very special type of output. This is the output where all resources are being utilized. You're at full employment, about 5% unemployment. So the long-run aggregate supply is always going to be above full employment output, which is represented by the variable YF. Short-run aggregate supply. So because input prices are sticky in the short run, the short aggregate supply curve is going to be upward sloping. And this reflects the fact that in the short run, increases in the price level are going to increase firms' profits, and they're going to create incentives to increase output. As the price level falls, firms' profits are going to drop, and therefore they're not going to produce as much. So going back to that last sentence there, it says, as the price level falls, firms' profits drop, and this creates an incentive to reduce output. Now, all this is going to happen before wages and input prices adjust, and that would happen in the long run. All right, so let's look at a short-run aggregate supply curve. So we're going to have price level on our y-axis, real GDP on our x-axis. Short-run aggregate supply is going to be upward sloping as we go left to right. And you've got your short-run aggregate supply curve. And the focus for the rest of the lesson is really going to be on short-run aggregate supply. All right, so let's look at some changes in short aggregate supply. So an increase in short aggregate supply is going to shift the short aggregate supply curve to the right, and a decrease is going to be to the left. We've already talked about that in terms of an increase to the right, decreases to the left. The key to understanding shifts in short aggregate supply is the per unit cost of production. Okay, so per unit cost of production is equal to the total input cost divided by your total output. So let's take a look at an increase in short aggregate supply. All that's going to look like, you have price level on your y-axis, real GDP on your x-axis. You have your original short aggregate supply curve, we'll call it SRAS. Then it's going to go ahead and shift to the right to SRAS1. Now that S should be moved up. That S1 should be moved up over right next to the A. So all you have here is your short aggregate supply curve shifting from SRAS to SRAS1, and it is a shift to the right. Now, decrease in SRAS is going to shift to the left. So we have our original SRAS curve shifts to the left to SRAS1. Once again, that S1 should be next to the A. It just didn't fit on the PowerPoint. All right, so next video, we're going to talk about some of the determinants of short-run aggregate supply.